You don't have the old clapperboard then, Jack?
My clapperboard's in the shed.
Oh, you have got one, have you?
Yeah, I have got one. I make films.
All right.
So, right, brilliant. Okay, we're live on Facebook. So we'll just get that refreshed so I can see you on my other screen. Hello and welcome to ShedX episode 6. I'm speaking with Garry Rogers, former police officer, undercover police officer for GMP. We're going to be talking about his life and his book, and just some things in between, really. This is the first live in the morning. As you know, we usually do them in the evening. So we've shared this to some groups. So yeah, I just want to welcome Garry, Garry, just take it right back to the start and tell us your story.
Yeah, well, first of all, Jack, obviously thanks for giving the opportunity to come on and talk. What I want to make clear from the offset is, because obviously, as you've just mentioned, the main reason we've been on here, I've written a book. There's a lot of people who criticise that for a number of reasons. But the point I want to make is this isn't just another book about undercover policing, because there are plenty of books out there on that subject. So that wasn't my main thrust for having this book published. That's what I want to make clear from the offset. It's not me just jumping on some bandwagon, to do that. You had Peter Blexley on a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Peter's had books out, and he's covered the subject from his perspective from when he worked in the Met, and he was a very successful undercover officer. Mm-hmm. And the history of Peter speaks for itself. But that's not why I've done this. The main thrust of this book is what happened to me personally and my family as a result of corruption within the senior management of Great Manchester Police and beyond that, the Home Office. Right. And obviously, I'll be talking about that as we go through.
Yeah.
But and the other thing I want to say is, if anyone, whatever you bring out, somebody will criticise it. Not everyone's going to be happy with it for a number of reasons. One of the things they won't be happy about my book is because I mention Masons, which is a subject a lot of people will keep clear of for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to make clear is I have nothing against Masons per se. The organisation, they produce a lot of good charity work. What I don't agree with, I'll make that clear now, is that police officers should be Masons.
Right. Okay.
Because I think there is a bit of a conflict there in relation to the pair of them being together.
Right.
And in my case, that's what happened. Okay, so that's what I want to make clear. A recent thing that's just happened to me. Obviously, the book's out on different book suppliers. One of them's Amazon, and I've had 5-star reviews up to now. It was only published 4 weeks ago today, and then I looked the other day just to see how it was going, and there was a 1-star review. So obviously, my attention was drawn to that, and I looked at who put it on. And it was a former police officer from Great Manchester Police, right, who now runs, believe it or not, Great Manchester Police Retired, a site on Facebook for retired police officers in Great Manchester Police. Now, he gave it a 1-star and criticised it. Now, as I've just said to you there, I don't mind anybody criticising it as long as they've read it.
Yeah.
And he openly admits in his review that he hasn't read it. So how can you review something if you've never read it and he doesn't know the facts?
I think it's right, as we all get that. I've had it on 2 of my books. it happens that there are people that will always take offence when you are telling the truth.
Well, yeah, it's a good point, Jack. Yeah, I mean, I can't understand why he said what he said. But the main thing is, Amazon have took it down now,
right?
Because it isn't right that you can review something you've not read it.
Exactly.
So it's gone. But I just want to make that point anyway. So obviously, in relation to myself, born in Salford, which I'm proud of, in Manchester. Originally lived 2 up, 2 down, back street, toilet in the backyard. So come from that sort of background, basically. My mum and dad both worked hard, but didn't get very far. You see what I mean? They're always struggling, pinching from Peter to pay Paul. And what didn't help was the fact that my dad was an obsessive gambler. So a lot of the money that came in used to go on his horses, basically. And, we were always hiding from somebody knocking at the door who hadn't been paid a particular bill. So that was my life initially. We then, a few years later, my dad got on his feet a little bit, and we bought a rundown semi-detached house in Salford, near to the terrace houses we lived at. And because he was a good DIYer, electrician by trade, we were able to live there and do it up as we lived there. So that was a bit of a, an up in standards for us. It was just around the corner from the school I went to, which was Lower Kersal Junior School. So I could walk literally out the front door, around the corner. I was in school. Was I good at school? No, and that's one of my big regrets today, that I didn't do better than I did do. I passed the 11 plus, more by luck, I think, than anything else, which then meant I went to Salford Grammar. Now that was about 6 miles away from where we lived. So every day, once I went there, I was running the gauntlet, because to go through Salford then with the uniform, which stood out like a sore thumb, the green cap, green uniform, tie, grey trousers. It wasn't accepted by a lot of people down there, because obviously there was the comprehensive school where most people would have gone. So you were open to abuse, open to assault, especially carrying a briefcase around. It didn't go down too well. So I had to walk most days to school and walk back home again. And at school, again, as I say, I regret not doing better. I would whack school a lot. And what I would do is go into Manchester with a group of others. We'd hide our blazers in a little electricity substation near the school and go off into Manchester. Got caught shoplifting there. Was fortunate that the lady who saw us taking the stuff shouted, and it was like a bar room in a cowboy film when the piano player stops playing. When somebody walks in, everybody stopped in the store and looked round, and she shouted to us to put it back, which we had to walk back to the counter, put it back, and then walk out again. Had she have grabbed hold of us, it could have been a different story. That was a bit of luck for me, obviously, and the others I was with. Other thing I could do, I learned to drive early, because where we lived, there was an unadopted croft nearby, and I used to drive on there. So by the time I was 15, I could drive a car, which in some respects was good, but in others it wasn't, because it meant officially, under the law, I was still having to wait 2 years before I could drive legally on the road. So you can imagine how I was chomping at the bit to drive. I even went out with mates one night, bunch of keys. We were going to have a car, take a car. Thankfully, we didn't get in one. But you can see how my mind at that time, I was going down a particular road which wasn't good. So much so, the housemaster at Salford Grammar was obviously concerned about me and about the people who I was knocking about with. So he wrote a letter to my dad, but he got me in first and told me what he'd done, and that was more of a shot across my bows to make me think about things. So I promised him that I'd get on board and be better. And what did I do? I didn't do that. So he wrote another letter and sent the pair of them to my dad. And I still remember now him opening them letters that morning, because I went from one side of the room to the other. such was his anger. And again, this was fortunate for me because obviously he was caring. He wanted me to do well. He came into school and put the wheel back on, so to speak. By then, I'd decided, believe it or not, I wanted to be in the police.
Right.
Why was that so? I've got an older brother who by then was in the police cadets, and I used to see him, and perhaps that's what lit my imagination to want to do that. So on the basis of me, after my dad had been in, sorting things out, promising to get my head down again, the school who were going to expel me allowed me to stay on as long as I did okay. So I was one of those people. I was 16 in the latter part of 74. So I was 16, which is the age you could have left school. But officially, I couldn't leave until the April of the following year. So I had on my wall in the bedroom a calendar, which I used to mark off the days every day, counting down to 31st of March, because what I chose to do was, such was my intention to get out of schooling, was to leave school and join the police cadets as soon as I could. So that meant I didn't have to do the O-levels.
Right.
So I left. It was the 27th of March I left, 1975. Walked out of Salford Grammar, never looked back. And on the 1st of April, I joined Great Manchester Police Cadets in Manchester. And that again, was a bit of a kick up the backside, because having lived the life I had up to that point, and doing what I wanted to do to a point at school, having joined the police, it was like being in a military setup. And if I didn't, get my act together then, I'd be up the road. And added to that, the fact that I didn't take any O-levels, so I didn't have any qualifications, it was a double whammy, really. So I had to get my head down. So I joined Great Manchester Police Cadets. One of the fortunate things about being in the cadets at that time was I was in there for 2 years, and one of the things they did to you was they sent you to your college. So I went to West Wythenshawe College of Further Education, where you did obviously keep fit. You used to come down, train you every week. You used to go for runs, etc. But you were, to all intents and purposes, a student at Wythenshawe College. And I took 4 O-levels there: law, sociology, British Constitution, and English language. And I started off with good intentions, and started to mess that up as well. But when the exams were coming up, I got my head down and I managed to get 3 of them.
Right.
So having got no levels at school, I then thankfully got 3 at West Wythenshawe College. So I finished there after 12 months, came back to Manchester Cadets, and then you were placed into departments, different police departments for 6 weeks, which gave you an insight into those particular areas of the policing. So I went to scenes of crime at Longside. I used to go out every day with scenes of crime officer. That's, as I describe in the book, was quite daunting, because to be 17, I went to the mortuary one day, saw Wanda Scala, who was murdered in Manchester, in Moston. She'd been found on a building site, and I went to the mortuary, and at that age, to just suddenly have the doors opened and the body rolled out on the trolley that they have, was quite daunting. But again, at that time, no one says, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay for this?" It's accepted that you will be, because you're in the police. But it's still on my mind now, having seen that and seeing how she was. So again, different departments, moved around, went working also at the old Withington Hospital in what was then called the geriatric ward, which was the elderly ward. Right. And I worked there for 6 weeks. And obviously the days, months rolled by. I passed my driving test after 5 weeks, turning 17. But obviously I didn't have any money, and my dad didn't. So he bought me a £50, it was 50 quid, a Vauxhall Viva from Pemberton Auctions in Manchester. And when I was at at college, one of the girls there, who was a cadet, her dad was a chief superintendent at Salford, so had plenty of money, and he bought her a brand new Honda Civic. So that's what she would turn up at college in. And I turn up in this old Vauxhall Viva, which was rotten, really. And so much so, I drove to college one morning. The latch on the bonnet was broke, and the bonnet flipped up onto the roof of the car. How I didn't have an accident is another thing. But I used to be embarrassed to park anywhere near her, because to get the thing started after I come out of college, I used to spray Easy Start up the air intake. That's the only way I could get it started. So you can imagine the embarrassment, really, of that. But anyway, I got through all that, finished college, all the different departments, and eventually was then made a police officer.
Right.
After 2 years, went to Bruges in Warrington for the course there, which was again quite daunting, because that's a change from being a police cadet then. One of the things I was proud of was my collar number and having the big hat. Because as a cadet, you just had a flat cap.
Yeah.
But to have been waited all that time to be a police officer, it was a great moment, really. Okay. And after the course at Bruges, which is where you're learning the law to be a police officer, you take exams every week. If you don't pass them, you get back staged, and obviously if you don't pass them, you're out. So again, a lot of pressure on you to keep going forwards. A lot of physical activity, a lot of marching, and you gel together as a team, as a class. And at the very end, you obviously have the final parade where your family, friends can come and watch. You have the police band march around the square, and at the end of it, you come off and throw your caps in the air, and that's the end of that course. And that's when you realise you're not going to see one half of those people again for the rest of your life, because they've come from all over the country. But, you know, for the 10, 12 weeks you've been there, you've been part of a team yourself. So that's what happened. I got posted to the A Division, which is in Manchester City Centre. Started there on nights, on a night shift. Again, quite daunting to arrive as the newbie on the shift. And that was one of my major fears. How are they going to accept me? You know, because they're working together as a team, and you arrive. One of those individuals has then got to take you out and hold your hand, which is what you have to do for a period of time before you can go out on your own. So some people would accept that as, and we're well into it, and others have somebody put with you. They don't want you there for a number of reasons. So, you know, to some you're okay, to some you're a bit of a leper, really. But the team on the A Division were fantastic. I was accepted. Everybody was great from the start. One incident that happened to me there was I was on my own. I was out on my own at this point, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, I went to the report of a stolen vehicle in Manchester City Centre, which was an old racing green Mini, and the number of it was something like 4869, and the letters were TJ. And I've always liked Tom Jones, and I always thought at that time that would have been a great number for his Bentley or Rolls Royce as a personal number. I took the details of the stolen vehicle, informed the control room, and it was put onto the police national computer for other patrols then, if they ever spotted it, to stop it. And that was it. I carried on with the shift. I finished at 7 o'clock the following morning, and obviously I was tired by then. It was a Sunday morning, and I was driving home, and all I wanted to do was get in bed. I got to a set of traffic lights in Salford, where I was waiting to turn right, because the lights were against us. And in front of me were a couple of cars, but immediately in front of me was this racing green Mini. And I looked at the number, it was 4869 TJ. So I thought straight away, there's that car. I took the details of, and I thought, oh, they must have got it back, the owner. So the lights changed, we turned right into Lancaster Road, and I was obviously thinking, is it him? So I got on the wrong side of the road, and I was looking into the car, and the driver looked at me, and it was quite apparent it wasn't the guy who had reported it to me. So I'm still in half uniform at this point, blue shirt on. So I bibbed, and he's looking at me thinking, what's this lunatic doing? And I pointed to him to pull up on the side. And he did. And I pulled up behind him. And I'm in my own car now, bearing in mind. I got out and I'm walking to the driver's door, and he's obviously looking on the wing mirror. So it's quite obvious by then what I am, because you can see the half blue police uniform. Just as I got to the door, the revs go up and he shot off, left me stood on the road. So I ran back to my own car, got in, and I was off after him. Now, again, this is like, 7:10 on a Sunday morning, about 1977, and no mobile phones. At that time, police shifts would have been changing over. So I've just finished nights. Those coming on early would have been having briefings, etc. So there was nobody about, apart from villains and police officers going home. So I was after him, and he did a couple of manoeuvres up some main roads. Eventually, he gets onto a dual carriageway, which is in Salford, which is Broad Street, going back towards Salford Precinct. And I could see in through the rear window of the car, with it being a little Mini. And I could see what I thought was the butt of a rifle. And he was messing with it as he drove along. And then when we got to the big roundabout near Salford Precinct, he was ahead of me and he came off the slip road. As I came down the slip road onto the roundabout, he pulled the car up on the roundabout. He was out with the door open and stood facing me with a rifle pointing at me. And I had seconds to think about what to do, because in 1977, that wasn't an everyday occurrence like things happen these days. And, I put this to people after this happened to me about what would they have done. And all the macho people say, I'd have rammed him. Yeah. And my point was that an air rifle or was it an imitation rifle? I don't know what he'd been doing. The way he was heading when I came across him was down to the A580 East Lancs Road, perhaps going to go up towards Merseyside, Liverpool. What he'd done from in the hours in between him stealing that car to me coming across him again at 7 o'clock, and it's anyone's guess. But the point is, he had this rifle with him, and he pointed it at me. So, what did I do? I went round the roundabout. It's a big roundabout there. As I came back round, he jumped into the car and driven off down Broughton Road, Broughton Lane, and down there. And he'd obviously done a right or a left off Broughton Lane. I looked for him, couldn't find him, and I got into a phone box. Again, no mobile phones. Rang the control room, and they circulated it. Following day, I had to go and look at photographs at Criminal Records Office, see if I could identify him. No. And to this day, I don't know who he was, what he was doing, or whether that was a real rifle or not. The other thing is, had I have rammed him, and it was an imitation or what do you call it, an air rifle, would I have been justified in doing that? Well, I would argue I was, because I'm fearful of my life at that point. Because he's pointing a rifle at me, and if that was real, I'd be dead if he'd have shot. So, but I chose not to, because I hadn't been in long. I was full of what was right and what was wrong, and I just went round the roundabout and came back, and that's what I did. But that was quite a rude awakening for me, for that to happen to me. And of all places for it to happen is in Salford. Another thing while I was on the A Division was I'd been stood outside Woolworths in bottom of Oldham Street in May '79, and it was getting on for lunchtime, time for my breakfast, lunch, whatever you want to call it. So what you had to do then was walk in for whatever your designated lunch break time was. So I was stood right outside Woolworths, and I was watching the world go by, chose to walk in. By the time I'd walked back to Bootle Street, and was walking down Bootle Street towards the main gate, it was just coming over the radio about a huge fire at Woolworths. And I think there was about 14 people killed in there that day, in the restaurant. It was all down to the furniture, if you remember, inflammable stuff they used on these bits of furniture then. Yeah. It was like an inferno inside. But it was just so ironic that I'd been stood outside there minutes before it started. Unbelievable. Whilst I was at Bootle Street, talking about traumatic events with the rifle, worse than that for me was my dad died on Christmas Day, 1978. Collapsed at home on the 18th of December. So next Friday will be 42 years since he died. Collapsed at home, taken into hospital. Been in there a week. I went to see him Christmas Eve, sat up in bed. He told me not to stay for the full hour. He said, get home and take your mum out, because they had friends they were going to go and see had he had been out of hospital. So he said, just have half an hour, which is what I did. I walked down, looked back at him to wave, and he wasn't looking at me for some reason. It sticks in my mind. He didn't wave. And I came out, took my mum where she was going. I went out. Following morning at 7, phone call from the hospital. I think you should get here. It's turned, for the worse. And as I drove down the Crescent in Salford, I could see through the window at the old Salford Royal, which is flats now, luxury flats. I could see the curtains around his bed. And when we got in there, everyone stopped us going towards his bed, and we were told to go in the matron's office. I knew straight away then, but my mum didn't. And it was only when we got in the office that they told us he'd died. I walked out of the matron's office. They tried to stop me, and I pushed them out of the way. I went down the ward, and I went around the curtains. He was still in bed. Obviously, he's dead, lay there. So that was Christmas Day. And I don't like Christmas. And some people think I'm a bit of the Grinch. But when something like that happens to you on a Christmas Day, you never ever really enjoy it again, because we went home that morning, sat in our house. Everybody else is getting on with Christmas, and we're sat staring at one another. What we're going to do next? You know, no time's a good time to die, but Christmas Day is horrendous. So that happened Christmas 78. A best mate of mine, a lad called Tony Quinn, he was a police officer on my shift. A little bit older than me, he was, but a great mate, basically, and a good police officer. So the following year, 1979, we'd been on afternoons, a full 7 days of afternoons, which is 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. Right. I, at the time, was working on the van, which meant we worked 4 p.m. to 12 midnight to overlap for when shifts changed. Yeah. So it was the done thing at the end of afternoons that the whole shift would go out for the night. And one of the places we used to go to was a place called The Boat in Stretford, which was a boat on the river, but it was a discotheque. Right. So it had a couple of dance floors. But it was open till 2 o'clock in the morning. So obviously, if we finished at 11, everyone would get the best bib and tucker on, and they'd be out, and we'd go and it was like team building. So we'd go socially. I'm still getting over my dad dying, obviously. I was on the van. I drove in at 11 o'clock to Bootle Street when they were all stood there waiting to go off to the boat, having got changed. And Tony was stood with them. And he talked to me through the window, passenger window of the van, and asked me if I was going. And I said, if I didn't get tied up with something, I'll come. So they all go, and I carry on with that shift, finished at midnight. But I put it down to what had happened with my dad, really. I wasn't in a socialising mood, really. So I went home, got in bed, and about 5 o'clock in the morning, there's a knock on my door. And I looked through the bedroom window, and there's 2 colleagues off my shift stood there. So I went downstairs, opened the front door, and long story short, they told me Tony's dead. They'd been out for the night. He was on his motorbike on Deansgate in Manchester, and hit a lamppost. So in the space of six months, my dad died, and then Tony died. He was my best mate, and I carried the coffin at the funeral with the drape on, with some others who worked with him. But you know, I don't know. I still don't know to this day what effect that had on me, you know, as a person. If you can believe the mentality of the police at that time, when my dad died, my brother worked at Bootle Street with me. He was on a different shift team to me, but we both worked there. And the chief inspector of the division got us both in when my dad died. And his attitude was, very sorry. He says, only one of you can have compassionate leave to sort out the funeral. So one of you can have time off, the other will have to come in. So him being the eldest, he obviously was the person going to do the arrangement for my dad's funeral. But I then went back to work. So, I mean, I had your dad die on Christmas Day. I'm then told I've got to come into work. And one of the things that happened when I went back to work, I went to a sudden death at the back of the NCP car park, back of Lewis's. There was a guy who was exactly the same age as me dad, had a heart attack. And I had to deal with that. You know, they won't get away with it these days to do that. So anyway, the time at Bootle Street comes to an end, because I was always the sort of person who couldn't stay in one place too long. I had to be moving on. And the police service is a big service. There's a lot of things you can go and do in there, which is one of the fantastic things about the job. There's not many jobs where you can be something, but then divert into different departments. So it was fantastic for that. And one of the things I did was take an advanced driving course. Yeah. Because I've always been, obviously, I've said to you, intrigued with cars. So it was something I always wanted to do and get that under my belt to be an advanced driver. But one of the preconditions was, if you went on the course, you would have to, if you passed, go on traffic, which wasn't something I really wanted to do. But if it meant me getting an advanced driving course, I was willing to do it. So I went on the driving course and passed, and I got sent to Salford in Manchester, which is where I was born. So I know Salford like the back of my hand, obviously. I did that for 18 months, and in that period of time, I got an advanced motorcycle course, and I went on that. Passed the advanced motorcycle course, and also a HGV Class 1. So I got all those things under my belt, which were great. To get that HGV driving course in Civvy Street would have cost a fortune. But you know, I've got these courses. This is what I want to make clear, because obviously when I come on to the Masons later on in the story, I haven't got these because I'm a Mason and or I know somebody. I've applied for them like everybody else has, had an interview, and I've got them. So that's how I've got these things. So having got the advanced motorcycle course, I then transferred from Salford Traffic onto the motorcycle wing. One of the good things about that was you didn't work nights on motorbikes because it was too dangerous. So the latest you would work would be a pinch midnight. So great, you know, and to be riding around on those bikes that they had, the thrill you get from when you get sent to a job and you put those horns on and those blue lights, and you're going through traffic, it was fantastic. You know, I don't think anybody would say they didn't like it. It was absolutely brilliant. So having got that qualification, I worked on motorcycle wing, doing all that for another 15 months, I think it was, 2 years. And an advertisement came up for advanced motorcyclist for the Regional Crime Squad. So the Regional Crime Squad is what is today the National Crime Squad. Right. And the way the Regional Crime Squad works, it's funded by all police forces in the country. So they all put money into a pot, which then allows the, as it was then, Regional Crime Squad to exist. And what they do, they deal with criminality that transcends, this is their words, transcends force boundaries. So you're looking at criminality, which is the more serious stuff, but which local police forces can't or haven't got sufficient staff to deal with or give time to look at. Because one of the main things of the Regional Crime Squad is it's surveillance. Yeah. Right. Okay. So you become you're trained in surveillance, both foot and mobile. And what do? You go observing, following villains who you believe are up to no good. And if you do that right, it's a fantastic tool because you get to see things which evidentially are fantastic. So I applied for that, and again I got that job. And I went working from Bolton at Castle Street. And that again was a fantastic office. And that is where I first met guy I mentioned in the book, who I refer to as Harry, which isn't his proper name.
Of course.
He's a guy who was at that time the main undercover officer, and did a lot of operations in this force area, but beyond as well. And I got to see at first hand what he was doing, because I got to work on the jobs in a background capacity. But obviously that sparked my interest in that sort of police work, and he had great success at it because he was good at it. That's the bottom line, and he knew what he was talking about. So in relation to the surveillance work, one of the things we did one day was we had information about a team from Salford who were doing robberies on money in transit vans. Now, the information on the particular morning was that they were at one of two addresses. So the surveillance team split in half. One went early doors to the first address, the other went to the second address. The idea was, if they had a move off from either of those addresses, we'd be on the radio in contact and we'd get together and follow them. So it just so happens they were at the address I was at. So that day, there was one car and me on the bike that day at that address, and they moved off from the address. So we were then following them with a limited surveillance team, hoping the others would be able to get with us as soon as possible. They headed down to Trafford Park, basically. And as we were going down Trafford Park Road, there was a bank on the left, and a Securico vehicle had just pulled up. And they were observing it. And then they went past the bank, where there's a big pub on the corner, down the side street there, turned the car around, facing out, and the passenger got out and made his way around the back of the pub and across the croft towards the bank. Basically, he did the guard who was getting the money bags in. And he had bags as he ran off, having attacked the security guard. He was obviously unaware that we were observing him. One of the lads in the car rugby tackled him in the road. The bags went everywhere. The money was all over the road. But he was obviously keen to get away. The car driver of our car got out. So they were both sat on this fella in the middle of the road with money blowing everywhere. That left the driver, who couldn't see this going on around the corner, because he's parked at the side of the pub out of the way. But he's still sat waiting for his mate to come back. The whole point of the bike is basically to keep it out of the way. But it needs must on this occasion. So I rode around the corner knowing what has just happened. And I pull up just short of his vehicle. And he was looking at me, obviously. Now, I'm not dressed in any police uniform, just dressed like a courier. And I got off the bike, put it on its stand, and I was looking at the building, the pub, where he was parked alongside. And I then noticed that the driver's door window was down. So I went to him and asked him what time it was. And as he looked, I grabbed the keys, turned the ignition off, and pulled them out. So he wasn't going anywhere. So he didn't need to be the brain of Britain to realise things weren't right now. So he was obviously, it was a fight or flight syndrome. He got out and we had a tussle, and I managed to get on top of him and get him down on the floor. But I was sweating like a pig, because you can imagine being in leathers, motorcycle helmet, fighting with somebody. I was sweating like a pig, but eventually I got him on the floor, he was down, and then the rest of the team arrived and they all got arrested. But you can see the beauty of the surveillance thing, where you can see these things happen in real time. And can they ever go to court and say not guilty? No, because they're knackered. And I know there might be people watching this who don't think that's good, and I can understand that. But from my perspective, doing that job at that time, that was fantastic. And that's what I was paid to do. And we got the results. And the regional crime squad were excellent at that.
So back to rights.
Exactly, yeah. So those are the sort of jobs we're getting involved in. And, my interest always been in the undercover side. I moved on from there after 3 years and went to Preston on the dedicated drugs unit, which were just set up at that time, which again, there was one office in Bebbington in the Wirral, one at Preston, one at Salford. Those were the 3 dedicated drugs units. I did that for 2 years, but I then was thinking about promotion. So I took the sergeant's inspector's exams, passed them both. again, which I was really proud of, to pass them both first time. So you can see how my career is slowly but surely going up and up. So I decided then to come back to force. I asked out of the drug squad, and I came back to GMP because I was looking for promotion. I was working in the CID at Farnworth one particular Saturday, and in the canteen there was Harry, who I mentioned to you before.
Yeah.
And he was running around like a ferret, and I knew he was doing something. Didn't have much time to talk, but somebody else was telling me that he was involved in some operation, and it was to do with the football hooligan problem.
Right.
So obviously, late 80s, there was a big problem with the football hooligans, and the job he was involved in at that time was against Bolton Wanderers and the hooligan element of Bolton Wanderers football supporters. And Margaret Thatcher had approached the force for Harry to set up a unit, basically, and get on with it. And the beauty of that department was Harry was at that time an inspector, and his direct line of command was straight up to Assistant Chief Constable, with no bosses in between. So normally he'd have to go to a Chief Inspector, Chief Inspector would go to Superintendent, they'd go to Chief Super, all the way up in the chain of command. He went straight as an inspector up to Assistant Chief Constable. So it was such hush-hush sort of work. Only those who need to know knew. So I was intrigued that day when I saw him, and they worked from an old police station in Prestwich, in the attic. That's where they were based at that time, because it was early days. Because things changed later, obviously. But that's where they worked from. So I was intrigued. I looked into it a bit more, and I popped in one day because I was working in the area, and I went to see Harry, and I told him I was interested, and it was one of those departments or courses that were never advertised in police correspondence. If you normally, like when I went to the Regional Crime Squad, it was advertised on orders, so everybody could apply. This wasn't like that. They kept it very hush-hush. So I was told he'd see if I could go on the course, but there was no favours there. I had to pass the course if I was to get in. I couldn't rely on me knowing him, if is what I'm saying, to get in there.
Yeah.
So I went and did the course, which again in the book I don't give anything away about that course because it's quite involved. So when I'm later accused by Great Manchester Police, a few weeks before my book was published, of giving secrets away, it was absolute garbage because I didn't do. I skirt over that in the book, but I went and did the course, passed, and I then had a dilemma because I was given a date for starting, in which the department was called Omega.
Right.
And I was given a start date, but I was also, from another angle, being told I could go for the sergeant's promotion.
Right.
So I had to weigh up. Was I going to stay in uniform or back in GMP and go for promotion, or was I going to go to Omega? And that is what I wanted to do. So I went to Omega and rolled my dice, basically. I started in the February, and on the first day, by the time I got in there, they were looking at Manchester United football hooligan problem. So the first day was tasked with looking through the intelligence, because I was going to be, as an undercover officer then, put into the system and go doing that job. As I went through all the intelligence, there was one particular lad who I went to school with, in primary school. So how could I ever go in there with a false name, as it would have been, and come across him and him know who I was and perhaps know what I went on to be? So I fell at the first hurdle, basically.
Right.
I couldn't be deployed as an undercover officer on that. So I had to go on the technical side, which is what I did. One of the other things Harry got at that point was he was approached and got the contract to cover all England home and away games. So on the first day I started, I was told that in the June, I'd be going to Italy for the World Cup, which, you know, to be told that on your first day, fantastic. Now, I had to prepare for that. And that period of time leading up to June is what I was doing. But then June came and we went to Sardinia. We were then living and breathing with the English football hooligans. And obviously there was a plan in being for when things were discovered about what was going to go on, to be able to get that back to a control room, trying to avoid as much trouble as possible. Obviously, history, you know, speaks for itself. You can see some of the things the English fans got up to. Not everything was avoidable, for sure. And there was one particular point in Rimini where it kicked off big style, and the Italian police were there with rifles, with tear gas, and it became a bit of a riot in the street with their big, like, military vehicles that they have, just driving them at the fans, and everyone was running amok. And I thought, for my own safety, I'll just get myself up against the wall so I can see what's going on, because I knew then there was nothing behind me. And as I stood there, another lad stood at the side of me doing the same thing, and I heard him shout, and when I looked, a brick had hit him in the face, and he went down. And the point is, I felt sorry for him, but that could have been me. Oh, yeah. So we ran off again, and they herded us up eventually on a garage forecourt. And I've still got to this day, because I had a camera with me. I took pictures lying on the floor of them standing over us with the rifles, with the tear gas. Had they have seen my camera, as they did with some others, they smashed them up. Obviously, they didn't see mine, and I've still got those pictures. But it was them sort of things that went on there, which was horrendous, really, because had I got hit in the face with a brick, I could have been out of the police from that point on. So I was fortunate. You know, I saw an ITN news reporter who was there to follow the match and what was going on and the troubles. And they grabbed his camera off him, which must have been worth a fortune, off his cameraman's shoulder, and they smashed it up on the street, swiveling it round with the cords, hitting it on the floor. It just broke up into thousands of pieces. Now, we were there at the time, so I saw who did it, and they got arrested, charged. So that was the beauty of being in amongst them. Yeah. But, you know, the way you've got to look at it is, had they found out who we were, and I was only one of another 5 police officers there who were working undercover as in the football. But it's amazing. What amazed me most was, if, for example, I'm a United fan, if we were playing Tottenham at home, and I'm talking about back then as well as today, there'd be all hell let loose back then on a Saturday. There'd be fighting between Manchester United and Tottenham. They'd go searching one another out and they'd have a fight. When you went to England games, those same Manchester United and Tottenham fans would be one big family. So there was no rhyme or reason with it. And one of our best mates, so to speak, was a Tottenham fan. He used to come here to Manchester and stay with us, you know, thinking we were Joe Bloggs, not thinking we were police officers. But that was the thing you built up with these football fans, whereby they were convinced you were who you said you were. And, you know, it was a fantastic network we had. On one occasion in Turkey, we were in a bar, causing no trouble whatsoever. So it was all England fans in there, no trouble whatsoever. And next minute, the windows went in on the bar, and a load of chairs and tables came through, glass flying everywhere. We got outside, and there was a load of Turkish fans outside. So they'd found out where the English fans were, brought the trouble to the English fans. Had they not turned up that night, there'd have been no bother, because they were just having a good time. Who turned up then? The police. And there's no what's gone on here then. Get to the bottom of it. It's you're English, so you're guilty. So we all got took away then on trucks to this Turkish prison and put in there. And there was about 40 of us in a big room, in a big caged unit. The toilet was a hole in the floor. And we were there overnight. Next morning, took off in different groups to court, because they were blamed for the damage to the bar. But you see how that was where I'm saying, what I'm saying to you is, I was there. Had I read about that in the paper and not involved in what I was doing, I'd probably said they deserved it, English fans. Probably caused that. but they didn't, you know. But it didn't make any difference to the authorities, because in Turkey I'm talking about, because they were still got charged and they got fined for the damage.
So did you find that you had when you were in prison with them, did you find that made a stronger bond and made your story?
Yeah, because future things we went to, when you come across some of those who are in there with you, you've got something to talk about. Because remember that time when we were in bloody Turkey, yeah, and when we came out of that bar that night and all those Turkish fans were there, all they were doing was the old across the throat to us, you know, like going to slit your throat, and that was the environment of that place. But it built up that rapport with the fans. So, you know, it's good. It's a real thing, that, isn't it? You're not just making it up. It happened. So that carried on, and obviously the Amiga unit had great success with that. I went to the European Championships in Sweden in '92, which again we had an incident there. I mean, they welcomed the English fans with open arms there in Sweden, in Malmo Square, set up the tents, beer tents, places to live in. And what did the English fans do? Ruin it, some of them. And we were at one day, they were talking about getting two guys up on the beer tent on the roof of the tent. They'd get up there, be bouncing on it, basically. And the signal to attack was when officials went to get them down. That was the plan. So we got that information back to the control room, but that was what was going to happen. And with that information, they took the decision to leave them bouncing up there all day. So nobody went and got them. And after a while, they got fed up of bouncing because nothing happened, and they came back down. Well, that again is the beauty of having intelligence and that information. That in some way prevented, you know, a lot of trouble that day, and things just carried on.
Yeah, it's leveling out the playing field, isn't it?
Yeah, but you know that lad from Tottenham Hotspur, who was a mate, used to come and stay. He for his job was a postman, and at that he'd left his wife, he'd left his kids because he was besotted with Tottenham Hotspur and following England. And he used to pinch the credit card, as you could then, because they were just sent through the post without any proper security, like you've got more so today of. He'd have those cards away. So from being a postal worker, postman, he was using that job to fund, you know, pinching to fund his trips, and that's what he got up to. So with the success of that, the powers that be thought this is a good thing to use this undercover business. So they decided to move it from football, although we carried on doing football, but be more conscious now and let's focus on criminal matters. So the department moved from what was then called the X department, which was police operations, and it went to the V department, V for Victor, which is the CID in Manchester Police. Yeah. So it came up with a whole new set of senior officers in charge. So Harry's command then was up to a chief superintendent who was in charge of the CID. And this was a different ball game altogether now. Harry was more or less able to control things under the old regime because he had his experience, he knew what he was talking about. When he went to the V department, they don't like being told what to do. They're going to tell you what's going on. Yeah, to a certain extent. So we then started doing crime stuff, and I was the first officer then in the unit. And you're talking at that time of Great Manchester Police having 7,500 police staff, police officers, and I was one of 5 others. So there were 6 undercover officers in GMP. And what we did was, and this is Harry's influence. If you were chosen an undercover officer to go in that unit, you were taken out of the police. So you didn't go to police functions, you didn't go on any police courses, and to all intents and purposes, you were depoliced. And what's the reason for that, do you think?
Just
I'm interviewing you now, Jack.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would imagine it'd be an anti-corruption tactic, just so that people don't know who you are, wouldn't be able to find out whether you're a policeman.
Well, it could be that, but the main thrust of that is, and I'll use this as an example. Obviously, they ran an undercover training course, so you used to have people coming from all different departments, customs and excise, to come on Greater Manchester's undercover course. And some people, this is the thing about this job, and I'll say it at this point, being an undercover officer, to the extent that I did it, most police officers wouldn't want to do it, and a lot of police officers couldn't do it. And that will come out when I tell you about some of the jobs as we move on.
Right.
Yeah. So you can either do it or you can't do it. The point I want to make is my upbringing perhaps assisted me to be the undercover officer I was.
So it's an ethical issue.
You know, because I've mixed with certain elements, and I'm not calling them, because I was down there with them. I was going shoplifting. I was trying to pinch cars. When I was 15, I worked at my uncle's grocer's shop in Salford on a Saturday, Sunday, and he was just totally oblivious to what he was doing. But he used to let me take his van, and I'd go do deliveries to all the old ladies in his van. And I'm 15, so I didn't have a driving license, and I had no insurance. You know, had I had an accident, killed somebody, I wouldn't be sat here talking to you now about what I'm talking to you about. But that gives me a bit of an insight, understanding in my own personal makeup to be able to do what I did after.
So you could say the law was would have been a bit more fluid.
Yeah. And, and I could relate to people a lot more. Perhaps they could relate to me. You know, I came across that I was of a certain kind.
Yeah.
So that was good. And when I'm talking about depolicing, we had a particular guy came on a course one day, and he was put into a situation at a pub where he thought the people he was meeting were real villains who were selling low-key drugs. Right. And he was tasked that day with trying to get some off them. This is what he thought. So obviously when he walks in there, his backside must have been twitching anyway, because he doesn't want to mess it up. Plus he doesn't know who he's meeting. And they're telling him what they're knocking this stuff out for and what the situation is. He comes out with this, which I always remember. He said he'd go away and make some inquiries. Now, who talks like that? And the other thing he did, I'm a big believer in have you heard of NVCs? Have you heard of NVCs? Non-verbal communication.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer, I'm into that. So if you look at somebody, some of their NVCs can give them away in certain ways. So one of the things he did when he was in there, while he was talking to him, was rock on his feet. Now, whether that was a nervous thing, I don't know. But if you put that together with, I'll go and make some inquiries, to me, a real villain would have thought, what's he on about? Go make some inquiries. And they are looking at you because you're in their natural domain. You're the one who's in a domain that's not your natural one. You're the one who's standing out. Yeah. You know, so that's why you talk about depolicing, why it's so important. Yeah. So I got chose for the first job in there, which was a drugs job in Bolton. Again, in the book, the only reason I mention these is, and I don't give all the details. I don't mention any of the villains' names or nothing. I just want the reader to get an understanding about my early life, where I came from, what I did in the police. So I skirt over it. I talk about the jobs, but not to any great detail, because I couldn't start that book where my troubles started.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, and I'll reinforce that with that book is 328 pages, and the publishers, when I submitted it, I was contracted to 2,000 and something, but I'd gone up massively over the word count. And they asked their own personal editor who oversees it to reduce the word count, because otherwise the price had to go up.
Right.
Their own personal editor refused to do so, because she said the story wouldn't be the same without everything in.
Right.
So, you know, the book originally starts off at 25 quid. It's reduced now on Amazon and stuff like that. But, you know, the point is that needed to be in.
Yeah.
So I do talk about these operations, but not in fantastic detail. So there was one at Bolton, which went extremely well. I then moved on to one in Moss Side, again with another drugs dealer who ran a market stall in Moss Side, a record store, dealing in heroin. Again, fantastic to have got into him. And then I got to his girlfriend's house. He had a Nigerian diplomat as a neighbour, and his wife, on the day I went to buy the stuff, he made the phone call to bring the gear in because I had the money, and it was all being surveilled with cameras, etc. My being at that property in Moss Side, and the Nigerian diplomat's wife came from her house with the bag of gear, so she was hiding the stuff at her house when he needed it.
Right.
So, and when they went back to the house, she had 2 young kids in the house. She gets arrested, you see. So obviously social services have to get involved. Nigerian diplomats' kids are taken into. So that was that one. Then I did another job in the city centre, near the Hacienda. Another team who'd just come out of prison for supplying. I got into them. Over a long period of time, we built up this rapport. I was knocking about with them, and I don't know if you won't know around near the Hacienda, will you?
I went there on a visit once, many years ago. Probably.
Right. Well, around the corner from where the
90s.
Hacienda was, near to the Ritz, which is renowned, the Ritz nightclub. There's all arches, railway arches. Yeah, and these were then made into units. So they put frontages on the arches, made them into units. And I had one of them for this operation. And this team thought I was opening it up as a wine bar. So they came regularly to there. There was all jobs being done, and they were giving me advice on what to do with the wine bar. But they were knocking gear out. So I started ordering stuff through them.
Right.
So I ordered this particular day. I'd had stuff off them, and it was the first time GMP let money go for the purchase of a kilo of Amfet. It was. So they let money go for the first time. But now that was good because it gave me a lot more credibility. And then I ordered 6 kilos to be delivered to the unit that day. And what should have happened was the gear was delivered. Once I was happy it was right, I was then going to give a prearranged signal at the door, and they were then going to strike basically, and arrest them in the unit with the drugs. And what I should have done was run away. So they've got a lot of answering to do then, haven't they? When they get arrested in a unit with the drugs, they've got a lot of talking to do to get themselves out of it. And at that point, they still don't know I'm a police officer. So I give the signal, a big truck pulls up outside, drug squad jump out, all geared up with the stuff on, stab vests and everything else, running the unit. When I saw them running, I ran myself back up towards the Ritz, and I should have escaped. And obviously what they would say was, what they would have said was, that's not our stuff, it's his, he's just run off. It's his unit. And that would have been their story. Now, as I'm running away, there's a backup arrest team running towards the unit. And they, because they haven't been told who I was, think I'm one of the targets running away. So they grabbed me basically. A bit of a scuffle took place. There was about 6 of them against me. And I was like 17 stone at the time. And I give as good as I get. But I thought they were making it look good. Yeah, and then I would have broke free and ran away. I thought it was all for effect. But it wasn't, because they genuinely believed I was a villain. So what they then did was they kicked my legs away, my face hit the floor, and I broke my cheekbone. And my tooth fell out, top left tooth. And I got arrested, thrown in the back of the car, and took to Bootle Street and put on the cell block with the other two. And they're shouting to me, keep my mouth shut, don't say now. So I eventually get taken out. They think for interview, but I went to hospital, and that's where I got the cheekbone, because it had come up then like a don't know what. So those are the things that go wrong on these jobs. And one of the things that happened to me was that. And my only thing was, I said to them at the time, I just want this login, because if my eye goes pretty pear-shaped down the line, I lose my eyesight and my job, I want it known that that's caused it. Yeah. But what the point is, it should never have happened in the first place.
No.
And what happened then, what was decided as a result of that, was that on any future undercover operation, they would take Polaroid snaps of the undercover officers involved to show at any briefing that morning, so that nobody could say they didn't know who anybody was.
Right.
So that came from that, and I was happy with that. But the way I'm stressing that at the moment is because these are things that happened to me and what I put up with to make the job work. And then I compare that with how they treated me further down the line.
But again, did you getting nicked then? Did that help cement your reputation?
Well, they when they get arrested and taken to the nick, they say what they did say was that gear wasn't theirs, it was mine. They stabbed me in the back, even though they're telling me to keep my mouth shut on the cell block. Yeah. They said it's nothing to do with us, it's his. Right. Then they're told, well, Joe Bloggs, he's a policeman. And obviously that's when their arse falls out. Because they know then, if that's true, they're knackered. And it was true. So that was another success for me. I did a couple of jobs. Obviously, I'm still going abroad with the football, etc. And another job came in for Merseyside, Liverpool. So you can see how the unit was becoming well known all over the show for the successes. And again, I'll say this technique of policing is the last tool in the police toolbox that they use. You know, they're not using this for people who go pinching milk bottles off steps. This is people who are, and it has to be, I can't come to you and say, Jack, go and set something up for us, will you? So that you can introduce me as a police officer. Get somebody doing something and then introduce me and we'll nick them. Yeah, you can't do that. The only thing I can join as an undercover officer is an ongoing conspiracy. So whatever was going to happen would have happened whether I was there or not. Right. Yeah. So for the law, otherwise you become what's called agent provocateur. Yeah. You're making somebody do something they wouldn't normally have done. Yeah. So those who I were dealing with at that unit would have sold those drugs to somebody else. Yeah. If it wasn't me. Yeah. So that's the way you got it. It's not unfair. They were doing it. So it's not entrapment. It's not entrapment. No, because had it been entrapment and they could prove it was entrapment, it got kicked out. There was no way it was entrapment because they were dealing it. Right. Okay. Yeah. So they got approached then by Merseyside, and this job came in Wavertree. I'm only mentioning this because it's fascinating really as to what happened. It was a guy who ran a cafe immediately opposite Wavertree Police Station. We're talking now, that must have been about 1993. And there was a guy who headed the drug squad in Merseyside called Elmore Davis. And they were doing a documentary on him on the TV. He was a Mason, Elmore Davis, Chief Inspector, charge of the drug squad, bent. He eventually ended up living with one of the gladiators, a Hearn. Yeah. I don't know if did you ever watch the Gladiators years ago? I did, yeah. Yeah, well, a Hearn was one. Well, I forgot what his name was on the Gladiators, but he was one of them. And Elmore Davis was into him, and I say Elmore Davis was corrupt. Now, he was a Mason, and they were running this TV documentary about Merseyside Police at the time, and he'd just been declined promotion to superintendent. And he came out, that's pardon my French, on the documentary on the TV, he came out with, when he found out he'd not got the promotion, fuck him, he said. Yeah, which is quite ironic with what happened to him later, because he was bent at that time. So what he's saying is, bollocks to them, and I'm going to go off and do my own thing with what I've already got set up. He was obviously making a few quid on the side, but so this guy at the cafe opposite Wavertree Police Station, dealing in heroin and ecstasy. I get into him, and we arrange an amount of heroin and ecstasy, and I'm going to his cafe this particular day. It's 3 levels, this cafe, massive building, and he had people, DHSS people, staying at above. So there was a lot of criminality going on, is what I'm saying, in that block. I'm not saying everybody from DHSS is corrupt. What I'm saying is he had a lot of drugs dealers and people staying there. So this particular day, I'm going to purchase an amount of heroin. And that morning, before I get there, technical officers from our office went into Wavertree Police Station, and it was on a need-to-know basis. Yeah, because I said to you, the office kept everything tight. So opposite the cafe was a brick wall, which was the property store, and they had to drill a hole through the wall to put a camera to be able to film for when I arrive later.
Right.
Yeah. So they're up and running with the camera, and we arrive in the truck, and I pull up outside, and I go in. One of the intriguing things about that footage, when you watch it, is he had his own surveillance team watching me, because when they watched the footage later, you could see these individuals walking up and down from the moment we arrived, looking at us and our van and anything else in the area before they brought the drugs to the cafe. Yeah, that's how well set up they are. And the only reason we know that is because we looked at the footage later, and you can see them. So we go in and sit down. Everything up to that point has been fantastic. He's dead relaxed. He says, I'll make a phone call in a bit, I'll have it brought round. He wanted to make sure we had the money. Gets in the back of the truck so he sees it. We go back in, sit down again. Makes us a brew, and there's a phone call. He goes off, comes back with a worried look on his face. And he said to me, I've just had a phone call there, he said. I've just been told there's a camera, police camera in the wall watching us. So what does that tell you? It's on a need-to-know basis. That camera's been put in there.
There's a snake in the grass.
Yeah. And down the line, they find out the phone call to his cafe was made from the police station.
Right.
Now, whoever that wasn't sufficiently in the know to know that me and the lad I was with was a police officer.
Right.
All they could tell him was, watch out, there's got a camera here and they're watching you. Yeah. And there was allegedly the point that Elmore Davis and his setup were involved with that, because he'd have had his fingers in loads of pies. Right. I was head of the drug squad. But can you imagine someone saying to you, they've just told me, I've just had a phone call and they've said there's a camera watching us over the road. I know that's true before I went in there. I'm then waiting for him to say to me, I don't know who you are. But he didn't say that. So I was happy that whoever he got the phone call from didn't know who I was.
You got to have a good poker face, though.
Well, this is talking about MVCs. You know, if you'd have filled your Pampers then, they'd have known about it. So it was a matter of being able to carry that on. And then what happened was, he said, don't worry about it. He came across as if he was apologising to us for the inconvenience. Don't worry about it, he says. They're always looking at me. So he said, I'll ring you later and we'll arrange it for somewhere else. So we left, exit stage left. He rings me later on, and we did the deal at the Rocket pub at the end of the M62 in Liverpool, and they got arrested. So there's another, case in point where that could have gone nasty if they'd known who we were.
No, you could have got shot there and then if it'd have.
Yeah. So there's sort of jobs that the office was doing, and doing them excellently and getting the results. I did another job on Granby Street, which is in the book, which again was a no-go area for Merseyside police, and that was Curtis Warren's domain.
Cocky.
Yeah, down there. So about I think it was 16 to 20 arrested that off Granby Street as a result of that operation. So, you know, these are quality jobs which take a lot of planning and a lot of thought. But ultimately you are putting yourself up front for it, and it's not a job where you go do it 9 to 5, come home and forget about it. You know, you got to think about, and I put that in the book, what effect is that having on your family? Yeah. You know, in fact, it affected a lot of my family. I'm not going to go into any detail about that, but you can imagine it would do. Yeah. And it's not right then what happens later on. That's why, again, I say about this book, the only reason I brought this book out is to get that story out there about what this organisation did to me to protect somebody who was bent. Yeah, and if I don't tell the story, nobody else will. Because people have said, you know, I ain't taking a risk doing this. Yeah, I am. And it's something I need to do before I kick the bucket to tell the story. Yeah. So having had that success with that, Harry, who was still in charge, left basically and went to the security services, went working for MI5. So we then get a new chief inspector who is mentioned in the book, a guy called Ken Seddon. Yeah. Now I'll say from the start, I never liked the guy. I could see right through him from the start, and he would no doubt say the same about me. He doesn't like me, but I hate him for different reasons. Yeah, he hates me now because obviously I'm talking about him. Yeah. Now he takes over. Never been an undercover officer, so he hasn't got a clue about that. If you put him on a par with Harry, there's a massive difference. He hasn't got a clue what he's talking about. He takes over in the office, and from that moment on, things start to change. Yeah. Example, cars for the use of undercover officers purchased from auctions were then registered to false addresses for the purposes of not being able to be traced back to the police. Yeah. And you know, you're safe in the knowledge then that car has got nothing to do with the police. What does he do? He stops that, and all the cars for the office are purchased from a car dealer in Oldham, who's his friend. Now, what I'd question that with is that hasn't been sanctioned by Greater Manchester Police. Who is that guy? Who is he talking to when he goes in the pub at night, when he says, I've got this great contract here, I'm selling cars to the police to use them on undercover operations? Does that not compromise any future undercover operation?
That's a conflict of interest, isn't it?
But more so, the undercover officers involved. Compromises them. Yeah. So he starts doing that. And the interesting thing is, when he's later charged with deceptions further down the line, his co-defendant is a car dealer from Oldham. Yeah, the guy who was buying the cars off. So I could see this, and I could see that he was going to ruin the office. Now, it doesn't bode well when I could see some of the things he was doing, and he's running an office or a department that up to that point has been so well thought of, got fantastic results. Whereas if he starts doing what he's doing, it brings into question the jobs that are done in that office. The integrity of them is what I'm saying. Because you can't do that work if there's any question marks over anything. In the 5 years I was an undercover officer, never had a single complaint about any of the methods that were used. You mentioned entrapment. Never ever had a complaint because they were always done right. Yeah. And that's the part of the parcel of doing that job properly. So he comes in, And then he starts introducing people, his own staff, that he wants in the office. So people who had been in there doing a good job, he got rid of, or started to get rid of them. He could also then see that I was a thorn in his side, because one of his big statements when he came in was, I don't want any Harry clones in here, meaning the guy who was in charge before him. Yeah, that was what he said. I don't want any Harry clones in here. I was happy, proud to be a Harry clone, because that's where I learned what to do. You know, he was a great mentor. So obviously, from that moment on, when he comes in, we don't see eye to eye on things. But what he can't have a go at me for is any of the work I've done, because I've always got 100% results. A particular job that I did was some ram raiders who were, they used to go to a gym and they took steroids. They would pump themselves up, quite intimidating then when they put a ski mask on and dress in black, and they would go do ram raids. One particular night they went to a house to have this lad's car away, and they were messing with it on the driveway, trying to pinch it. He heard them, and he looked out the bedroom window and opened it and shouted to them. Now you can imagine seeing 4 individuals pumped up with ski masks on, dressed in black, and they say to him, "Don't bother ringing the police, because we've got scanners here. We can hear what's being said. You know, if you ring up, throw us the keys down and make it easy." And he's in the house with his wife and young kid. So he's intimidated that much, he gives them the key and they take his car. Well, that's what they were like. They ran a police officer down one night when they did a job in a car. So I got into them at the gym they used. Yeah, I got into one first of all, and then obviously into the rest of the team. And they were doing ram raids left, right and centre. I could never join them as a ram raider myself, because I couldn't go on jobs with them, and if they killed someone, there'd be all hell to play if it was found out they had a police officer with them. So the level I went in at was as a handler of stolen property
offence.
Yeah, so then they were then intrigued because I had a Maserati, and when I used to go to the gym where they were, they started looking out of the window. So you could say they're either looking at that thinking, we'll have that away, or that guy's got a few quid. Yeah, and I created an image when I went in the gym that I was bent selling stolen property.
Right, okay.
So then they started to warm towards me, so much so they did away with their handler and started bringing everything to me. Yeah, and they brought it to a flat I had, and that flat was wired up and had cameras everywhere. So whenever they did a job, they'd bring it to the house and there'd be video dropping it off. Yeah, this particular Easter, just before Easter it was, they did a huge motorcycle dealership in Preston, ram raided it. They got away with all the leathers, all the helmets and the motorcycle boots. So you can imagine what that was worth. And they rang me and said, are you interested? So I'm not going to say no. I said, yeah. So they brought it to the flat and they were filmed dropping it all off with the gloves on. So I've got no fingerprints on it. And they drop it all off with me. Now, this was just before Easter, and there was an Easter break with the bank holidays, two bank holidays. And this is, again, Great Manchester Police. So I've got it to that point, and under normal circumstances, they decided they were going to arrest them now, but they would have been arrested when they dropped that gear off, the motorcycle stuff. Because it was a bank holiday the following day, and there was another one after that, they didn't want to pay double time to the interviewing teams. So they asked me to put them off till after Easter. So I had to say to them, I'm owed some money down south in London. And I'd built up such a rapport with them. They were happy to leave that stuff, fortunately, with me on the pretext that the following week they would get the money. So they're more than happy to leave the stolen gear, and I'd pay them the next week. But it put me in a position, because all over that Easter break, I had to be in touch with them on the phone. I couldn't go out at home, because if they saw me knocking about, because it's a small world at the end of the day, I'm telling them I'm in London. I was under house arrest, basically, but having to keep in touch with them on the phone and put them off till after Easter. And then they came for what they thought was for payment, and they got arrested. Now, what they did with them was they put them on remand at Strangeways. Yeah?
Yeah.
So all that team was put on remand at Strangeways. By this time, I've had quite a few fallouts with Seddon, and he gets me in this particular day and says, "My time's up, and you're going." Now, under normal circumstances, anybody in my position would have been offered to go onto the welfare side, so that I could then give my experience to up and coming undercover officers. What he said to me was, "You're going out." So he said, "I'm off next week." He says, "Think about where you want to go, and we'll talk about it when I come back." But he said, and to cushion it, he says to me, "You've been put in for the Queen's Police Medal for your work, right?" So I thought you wouldn't normally be told that because it's all this protocol. You wouldn't be told that. You just never hear about it. But he tells me this. So I go home that night. That was a Friday, and I think about it all weekend, and I'm not happy with what I've been told, basically. So I made the decision over the weekend. On the Monday, the first day of his week's leave, I decided to go to Force Headquarters, which was Chester House then in Stretford. Bearing in mind that what I've said to you is, as an undercover officer, you don't go to police stations, you don't go on police functions, courses. So it's a big decision for me to go to Chester House. So I rang the office and I went, told them where I was going. I went straight to Chester House in Stretford, went up to the CID floor, intending to see Detective Chief Superintendent David James, who was in charge of the CID. I sat outside his office, and another Chief Superintendent came past, a fellow called Albert Yates, who saw me sat there, and he asked me what I was doing there. So I told him. And he said, "Come in my office." So I went in there, discussed it a bit further, and he says, "You're not going anywhere." He says, "You're staying in the office." So straight away, I realised something's not right, and someone isn't telling the truth, and I got a good idea who it was. But you can imagine, being the rank I was at, going above a chief inspector's head, straight to a chief superintendent, and doing that, and to discover that what he told me was rubbish, didn't go down too well. So I continue with this ram raiding job, which I was halfway through. And he comes back off his week's leave, and he just basically ignores me, doesn't speak to me. So that job rolls on. They all get arrested, as I say, after the Easter break. I then spend a month transcribing audio videotapes for court with all the conversations that have taken place. It takes me a month on my own in isolation doing that. Then I go to the new unit, which they've then moved from this old police station, and they've got a private factory unit, which to the outside world is a business, but it's the new office. So I go there, and he says he wants to see me at a particular time. So I get there for that time, and he's got a big fancy office with big glass windows. He's sat at the big desk with his swivel chair, and 45 minutes go by from the time I'm told to be there, and I'm still sat outside waiting. So he keeps me waiting all that time. Another ploy of theirs to let you know who's in charge. So, because I realised the wheel was coming off with me and him, and I wasn't happy with him, I then made the conscious decision to covertly record conversations. So I was using what I'd used against villains against him. So he gets me in eventually, and he says he's never thought in as much detail about what to do with somebody as he had with me. He says, not only did you go and see your chief superintendent, but you went to see mine above my head. He said, I told you in the past, I was never afraid to grasp the nettle, and I I've been thinking deeply about what to do with you, whether to send you down the road. You know, basically, he was telling me he was going to thought about stabbing me in the back. He said, doesn't matter who you go and speak with, they will always side with me because that's the way the system is. This is what he says. Now, who he means by that, I don't know. Whether he's talking about the police hierarchy or the Masonic hierarchy, I don't know. But he says they will always side with me, no matter who you go and speak with. But it was then decided, because I'd intervened as I had, that I could stay in the office. He'd stopped me up to that point having any overtime. It stopped me going to the Undercover conference, Wakefield, which was an annual event. So I got sent to Coventry because of it. But he then said, you'll be considered again now for operations. So can you see how when he told me I was coming out, it was all his doing, nobody else's, because he didn't want any Harry clones in there, and he wanted to run that office the way he wanted to run it, and that was bent the way he was running it. So at that time, when I get told that, another job's come in, and one of the golden rules was that you only use a false name once on a job. So the last false name I'd used was on the Ram Raiders, and because I'd been sent to Coventry, I hadn't done anything else to create a new one. So a job came in for the Regional Crime Squad. It was in relation to a Manchester family who were connected to John Stalker affair. The family, they go back to the 40s in Manchester, and the information was they were importing ecstasy from Spain, also knocking out heroin. So a particular undercover officer gets to meet an informant who is going to introduce him. Yeah, the undercover or the informant doesn't like the undercover officer. They don't get on, so he refuses to do the job. So the Amiga office is in a dilemma now, because they've been approached by the Regional Crime Squad. A lot of money involved for the office to do it, and the kudos of doing it is going through the window because they can't get it off the starting blocks. So I get approached by Ken Seddon's number 2, Detective Inspector Tony. I'm told I can only refer to him by. Yeah. So I will do. He says to me, we want you to meet the informant for this job and see if you can get on with him and get the job going. I said, I haven't got a false name. I haven't been able to create anything. He said, it doesn't matter. What we've decided to do, if you get on with the informant, he'll introduce you, and further down the line, you'll introduce another police officer, and the evidence will start with him. Yeah. Right. So he said, nobody will ever know you were an undercover officer apart from the judge at any subsequent trial. So you will be protected. So you can use that false name you used on the ram raiding job. So that seemed all right to me, if that was true. And I didn't want to rock the boat anymore because of what I'd just been through. So I decided to do that. So I meet the informant and we got on fantastically. And I go and live down in Newquay because I couldn't be living here because such was their contacts. They'd be able to check me out left, right and centre. So I was obviously from Manchester years ago, but I was living in Newquay. And that's where I was going to be knocking this gear out. Yeah. So I get introduced to the main target and everything's running nicely. I introduce another police officer and the evidence starts there. And whilst we're waiting for this ecstasy to come in, he's selling heroin to the undercover officer I brought in. I'm there present while those deals are taking place. Yeah, I couldn't remove myself. I had to stay there. So long story short, the operation runs on, and eventually they get arrested. There's also a police officer from GMP who's arrested for giving them information off the police national computer about people's addresses off registration numbers. Yeah, he gets arrested. And what do they do with those who are arrested on that job? They put them on remand at Strangeways. So they've put them at the same place where the ram raiders are. And what do they do while they're there? They talk. And they discover then, this Manchester team, that the name I used was the same undercover officer as on the other job.
Mm.
And it blows me out. Also blows the informant out. You have to pay the informant off and he goes abroad. But I'm left with that legacy, because what I also discover is that they've took on private investigators to find out who I am, where I live. Yeah, and you know how I found that out? GMP didn't tell me. I got sight of a confidential report from Ken Seddon to the head of the CID, saying this is what the intelligence is, but they didn't tell me. It was only because somebody in the office slipped that document into my drawer, and I got sight of it. Yeah. So these are the sort of things they did. So where's their care, concern for me and my family?
Exactly.
You know. So they all get arrested. It was just at the Christmas, and I had Christmas off. Came back, and I'm immediately at. Are we all right for time here, Jack? Because I've gone on for like 4 weeks here.
No, it's fine, mate. Carry on.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we can go as long as you want.
Right. So after the Christmas, I come back and I'm immediately at Crown Court in Manchester, and I'm giving evidence against the Ram Raiders. Yeah. Now, what happens there? When you give evidence as an undercover officer, the judge has to agree it. You give evidence from behind a screen. Yeah. Now, people think nobody can see you. The only people who can't see you are those in the public gallery. Because obviously, when you've got villains up for trial, they'll bring the friends and family, the supporters, and they'll be sat there in the public gallery. So the only thing the screen covers you from is them seeing you. And as an undercover officer, you don't want to be seen because you might want to be used on another job.
Yeah.
So obviously the judge agreed to that, and I'm behind the screen. So I come through in the morning, get behind, give me evidence, break for lunch. I go out, and you come in and out through the judge's quarters. Yes, to get behind that screen. After lunch, I walk out behind the usher to go into court, and I get told to get back. And when I look up, someone's took the screen away, and everyone in the public gallery saw me. So I step back into the judge's quarters, they put the screen back up, and I come back out. So that's one thing that happened that day. Whilst that trial was running, again, after lunch, I come back, get behind the screen, and there's two people stood beneath where I'm stood in the dock, where I'm giving me evidence from, looking up at me, writing something down. Now, the trial hasn't restarted because we're waiting for the judge to come. I'm just stood there waiting, and they're writing down something. So they're not writing down what I'm saying, they're writing down my description. And it turns out then, these are the legal team from the Manchester-based family who found out now that I am a police officer. They've heard that I'm giving evidence in that trial, and they've come to get a description. Yeah. So once a judge comes in, the trial starts, and their barrister, Mr. Glassman, stands up and says he wants the jury sending out. So he's got a point of law. So the jury gets sent out, and then he puts 3 questions to me along the lines of, during this trial for the operation for the Ram Raiders, was I ever involved in this other operation, Operation Bluebell? So I could answer that quite honestly, no, I wasn't, because I didn't get involved in it till after the Ram raiding job. So because I answered them all to the negative, he then says to the judge, he wanted this trial stopping, throwing out because I'm a liar, because he has in his hand the file for Operation Bluebell, and I put a statement in with my false name on it. And he's saying I've told lies to the court. So the judge looks at what I've been asked, how I've answered it, and the facts, and realizes I answered it honestly. Had he have said, were you ever involved in Operation Bluebell, I wouldn't have been able to answer it. Or if I had, I'd have had to answer it, yes, I was. So that the trial continues, and they get convicted. I came out one night in the car to take me home. Someone followed us, tried to. All this was building up, building up. I had the trouble with Seddon stabbing me in the back. I had these problems with so-called private investigators trying to find out who I was, getting no support from GMP. I was at that trial getting no support. People trying to follow us home from court. And you imagine the pressure of that. I didn't have pressure from being an undercover officer. It was how I got treated by GMP. That's how I got post-traumatic stress disorder, because of that. And I went sick. After I finished in the trial with the Ram Raiders and I was released from court, I went sick. And during that time, that was when I went from 17 stone to 12 stone. I ended up in the heart care unit at Salford Royal. And I had cameras up my jacksie because they thought I had cancer because of the weight loss. Yeah. And I was off in total. I'm conscious, Jack, as well here. That I'm going on and on and on. So I'm going to try and thingy it a bit. Okay.
As you need, as you see fit, mate.
Yeah. So I'm off sick for 11 months. During that time, initially while I'm off, Ken Seddon gets moved overnight from the office. This is the chief inspector, who I'm saying was Ben. He gets moved from that office overnight. A new boss is installed, who came to see me at home, and I found out how Ken Seddon got to be removed from there. The Manchester Evening News, their reporter Steve Panter, apparently, who used to be their major crime reporter, who was well connected to senior command in GMP, he'd received an anonymous letter, as had the force, about Ken Seddon's goings on. One of the things he did, when I talked about cars earlier, one of the other things we did was we had properties, flats and houses, which were for the use of undercover officers on operations.
Right.
One in particular was on Eccles New Road in Salford. And Seddon came in one day and asked everybody to hand the keys in for that property because the regional crime squad wanted to use it on a job. So everybody who had a key hands it in to him. Unbeknownst to him, one individual was off on leave and hadn't handed the key in. So when he comes back off leave on the Monday morning, he goes to the flat and puts his key in and he can't get in because it's locked on the inside. So he knocks on the door and eventually this guy opens the door, dressed in his underpants, and he's there with a woman who it turns out is Ken Seddon's brother and his brother's wife, living in a covert undercover flat, rent-free. Who's paying the council tax? Who's paying the gas, electric? The taxpayer. And he's allowing his brother to live there, who apparently was a serving fireman, at the time. Right. Now, my point is, there were some villains lived in that block. Had he been going to work one day in his, again, half blue uniform, and they'd have seen him coming out of that flat is compromised because they don't know he's a fireman. He could be a policeman as far as they know. But Ken Seddon, had he not been found out, would have allowed his brother and sister-in-law to live there rent-free. Yeah. And then if nobody had found out about it, had all the keys given out again and said, go and use that on the job. And after an 18-month inquiry by the Internal Investigations Department, he goes before the chief for releasing information to an individual who shouldn't have had it. That's what he got done for, and a slap on the legs. And his argument in his defence was, it was better to make the flat look like it was lived in than leave it empty. So he decided to put his brother in there. Now, just listen to this, Jack. If that was his plan, and he'd have gone to the chief constable with that plan and said, that flat's empty, what I intend to do is put my brother in there with his sister-in-law, sister-in-law, just to make it look like someone's living there. Do you think the chief constable would have said, yeah, you can do that?
No, not a chance.
He'd have chased him up the road with his P45. Never in a month of Sundays is that right? For no other reason than, what if his brother got attacked while he lived there? Yeah? You just couldn't do it. So these are the sort of things he was doing for his own benefit in that office. And he gets moved overnight. Further down the line then, they send him to Australia as an ambassador for the force, for Great Manchester Police, on an anti-corruption inquiry. He's there for however long and gets sent back from there under a cloud for doing things he shouldn't have been doing. When he comes back here, gets arrested, he's interviewed, charged with numerous offences of deception, together with his car dealer friend. Yeah. As opposed to going to prison, he took off him his lump sum from his pension.
Right.
Yeah, that's what he got for those offences, instead of going to prison.
So he lost his pension.
Yeah. Now this is the guy who has been so well protected by the senior command of GMP, and the reason I put it down to is Masonic influence within GMP. What I've not said is that after he told me I was getting put in for the Queen's Police Medal, and I go sick for 11 months. I went sick in the February, and I used to work on these jobs. I was always the first officer in to start the job going. Yeah, you have to have somebody who starts it off, and then you would introduce other officers. Like I said to you before, I introduced the guy later on, and then the job starts moving. So the job stands or falls by the initial move off. So I was always the first one in. The lad who used to work with me, who did two and a half years as an undercover officer, I did 5. I was in there before he started. We gelled when he came in. It was a great relationship, professionally and personally. We got on well outside of the job. And the way people used to think of us at that time was like the Mitchell brothers from EastEnders. Yeah. So we worked well as a team, and the jobs we went on were fantastic. But when I got told I was being put in for the Queen's Police Medal, so was he told that at the same time. Right. And because of family situation at that time, he'd asked to come off being an undercover officer. So he did no more than 2.5 years. I was always the first man in on the jobs we did. But we both got told about this Queen's Police Medal. And he went on the welfare side in the office. Yeah. So I continued working as an undercover officer, and he was on the welfare side. So when I go sick in the February, I have all the traumas. My life's going down the toilet. I'm losing weight. I'm in hospital at the heart care. I get to December, and I'm on half pay. Yeah, struggling to survive. I had to pay cash in some insurance policies I had to keep going, because I was then looking at no pay at all. Yeah. And understandably, married, 3 children, got things to pay. So I'm approached by the force with 3 options for me to come back to work, none of which was suitable, but I knew I had to get back to work. So I had to choose one. And one of them I chose was the video imaging unit, which was in Chester House in Stretford, in the basement. And I was put in a room in there with no windows, copying videotapes for court. So having been at the top of my game as an undercover officer, yeah, through no fault of my own, I go sick for 11 months because of what's going on. I come back to work because my finances are in a dire straits, and I get put in this bloody basement copying videotapes. And just before I decide to come back on that job, and they wanted me to come back at Christmas, and I said I can't cope with all the merriment, because obviously I've got, I didn't know at the time, but post-traumatic stress disorder. And I cut myself off completely. Yeah, I didn't talk to any family, no friends. I could just happily stay in a room on my own, staring at the wall. My personality changed altogether. But I knew I had to go back to work, so I picked this particular job, and I said I can't come back at Christmas. I'll come back in January. And I decided to go back on the 22nd of January, when all that bloody messing about over Christmas was gone. But knowing my financial situation was a little bit better, because I was coming back to work, I decided to ring the lad who was my partner in the office, who I haven't spoken to for 11 months while I've been off. Right. Yeah. I ring him, and we have a bit of a general chit chat, and then he says in a low voice, "Have you got it?" And I said, "Have I got what?" And he said, "The QPM, Queen's Police Medal." I said, "No." And he said he'd got it in the Queen's, in the Christmas New Year's honours. So he got it and I didn't.
Right.
Now, what I've got to say to you again is, I was always the first one in. I did it for 5 years. I did it for 2.5 years. So why have I not got it on that basis? So having had my life going like that, because I'm coming back to work at Christmas, that decision was made. I find that out from him. I went even further down. So that Christmas was a disaster at home because it just fueled my PTSD even more. So anyway, I go back to work, starting this unit, and I hated it. I wasn't well thought of by the fellow who ran it. The chief inspector marked me down on the appraisal 6 weeks after I arrived, saying my appearance was worthy of a D. I used to get A for my appearance in the undercover unit. But by then I was 12 stone, had a shaved head. I looked like I'd come from Belson, basically. And he was marking me down on a D because of my appearance. So I questioned it and I went to see him. And he said, "We're putting our cards on the table. We thought, why are we getting this monster?" He said, "when we heard you were coming here." So this is another bit where I'm getting little bits and pieces from people. I can see, for some reason, things are against me now in GMP. Yeah. So I put a grievance in about why I hadn't got the Queen's Police Medal when I'd been told I was being put in for it. My colleague got it, but from my perspective, if he got it, I should have got it. So the grievance report I stick in to the head of the CID. I put it in his pigeonhole in the admin office at CID. I wait 3 weeks, never heard nothing. So I get back in touch with his secretary. She said he's never had it. So he's ripped that one up and just said he's never had it because he's seeking time now because I've put him on the spot, because there was a couple of commendations I was due that had also gone missing.
Right.
So I stuck another report in about everything, stuck it in. I went through this procedure of going through a grievance procedure, first with the head of the CID. He tells me I was still in for the Queen's Police Medal. Sit back and wait for it. Yeah, you're going to get it. This is what he says to my face. I go to the next guy, who is the new civilian head of personnel. Always used to be a chief super in charge of personnel, but they made it at that time a civilian post. So this Andrew Marsden, he gets the job. I go to see him, tell him what it's all about, and he's supposed to go away then and investigate the next part of it. I go back after 2 weeks, I go back, and he says to me, he's never been so embarrassed. They wouldn't let him look at any files. This is the head of civilian personnel. They wouldn't let him look at any files in relation to me. And as far as I'm concerned, this is what he's saying to me. There's nothing in there for you to get the Queen's Police Medal. It doesn't exist. The only time you're going to get it is if someone resubmits one. So there's a straight diversion from what the head of CID's told me to the guy who's in charge of personnel. He just said, you might think a person in my position can get answers. He said, they just won't let me see anything. So what does that say about GMP again? You know why they said that? Because he wasn't the sort of person they could wrap around the little finger. He's a straight guy who's come in as a civilian. Had it been another chief super, like the head of the CID, they'd have been able to do the old boys act and say, just say this, will you, and do this. But they couldn't do it with him. So all they had to do was not let him see anything.
Block him all the way.
Yeah, so then I go to the next stage up in the grievance is to go and see Assistant Chief Constable in charge of personnel. There was a fellow called McCrone, who was the biggest waste of time. He sent me away for 10 weeks after I saw him. I went back, he hadn't done nothing about it. Yeah, and one of the things I was showing him was when I saw the head of the CID, he produced a document, a report that had been altered And I've got copies of that to this day. And all these conversations I'm talking to you about now were recorded. So I've got them all on tape. So whatever's in that book is true. I've no worries with it whatsoever. That's why I name those individuals. Yeah. But the head of personnel, Macron, Assistant Chief Constable, doesn't do anything. And I'm just told it's not protocol to talk about Queen's Police medals. And there's nothing in what I'm saying. So go away, basically. So can you imagine how that affected me personally? With having, you know, the PTSD, and I just couldn't believe what they were doing. So I took it outside the force then. I became a bit of a pain in the backside, and I wrote to a police magazine, Police Review, that was going at the time. I wanted to put a letter in their letter page. The editor got back in touch with me and said, we've got to do an article on this. So they did it. And then I was having arguments with GMP. While I'm in the basement, we're all putting letters in each week, arguing, but nobody ever got me in face to face to speak to me about anything. So I went with him, and then eventually I got to see Sir John Stevens, who did the report into Princess Diana's death at the car crash in Paris. He later became the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, but he was Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary. And every year, HMIs inspect police forces. Yeah, they come in and inspect it. And you as a police officer or police staff can request an interview with them. So that's what I did. I went to see him at his hotel one night after he'd been out all day. And he had a staff officer called John Tapley, who, when I say I can count on these 10 digits on my hands, those who did something for me, that's the amount of people who are no more than that. Yeah, everybody else was a waste of time. John Tapley takes one of them, who was Sir John Stevens' staff officer. If it hadn't have been for him, being in the position he was in at that time, I wouldn't have got the Queen's Police Medal later. Yeah, it's because of him being there. And I've learned a lot from him as to what went on behind the scenes. So I got to see Sir John Stevens. He then gets me an appointment with the Chief Constable, which you were never allowed to have under the grievance procedure. It stopped at Assistant Chief Constable. Right. So I got to see David Wilmot, who later becomes Sir David Wilmot, in his office, top floor at Chester House. And I stressed to him that if he went away that day with nothing else, just with the thought that I wouldn't be sat there wasting his time if what I was telling him wasn't true. Again, long story short, he looks into it, and he then resubmits my nomination for the Queen's Police Medal because he sees that those concerned in it were all underhand, and it had been shredded. He reinstates that. I get it. 3 years later, I went to Buckingham Palace with my wife, and I said at the time, the icing off the cake's gone, because I forced them into a position where they had to give it me.
Bittersweet, I would imagine.
It was, yeah, it was in a lot of ways. But I had to go to those lengths. Otherwise, I'd have been saying to you today, Jack, I was once put in for the Queen's Police Medal, and you said, you couldn't be that pretty good at what you're doing. She didn't get it. That's how people think, you know. And that's what I thought at the time when I got it. Icing off the cake's gone with it. But obviously there was a lot of fighting going on there to get it. But the main thing is these corrupt influences within GMP and the Home Office, all to protect a guy who was bent, and they blamed me. All this happened because they blamed me for the anonymous letters to Manchester Evening News and to the force, which was totally off the mark because it wasn't me. No. Yeah, I've got a good idea who it was, but it wasn't me. But I got blamed for it because of the altercations I've had with him. Yeah, they pinned it on me and thought, right, we'll go for him, and then they ruined my life, my career.
Sounds like a scapegoat, really. Oh
yeah. So I get the Queen's Police Medal, and I'm over the moon, obviously, when I get it. I'm in jobs though that I don't want to do, because had all this not happened to me, I could have gone on like Harry did, perhaps eventually go and work MI5. But all my career is ruined. I've got PTSD, which an example of how it affected me was I could have a red mist come over me all of a sudden. Yeah. So one particular day, my son was going for his driving test in Bolton, and I took him, and we got there early at the test centre, and I parked in a bay which I thought was for people coming for driving tests. And we sat there because we were a bit early. Anyway, car comes in with a vehicle, driving test examiner in. He's just been out doing one. And he sees us parked where I am, and he basically he tells us to move, and that was all I needed because I went off on one, and I gave him both barrels, and then the rage went after I'd got it off my chest, and we walked into the office where he had to wait for the driving test, and I'm sat with my son. About 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, door opens, someone shouts my son's name, and it's the guy I've just bollocked outside. So can you imagine how guilty I felt?
Yeah.
Because I thought, I couldn't believe it, of all the people for me to have gone off on one with. And it's not that I was like that before, it was just the PTSD. You know,
I understand fully.
I could just go off. But the guy was a professional guy, so he didn't hold it against my son. It was me who'd done it, not him. And he passed, which was great. But, you know, all credit to my son to have gone and seen that through and took that test, knowing that guy could be thinking the other way. It could have affected his driving, you know. So anyway, I get I go to departments, things I'm not happy about, and my head's in a bucket all the time. And I eventually end up on the National Crime Squad, and I hated it. Everywhere I went, I thought, I'll get into this now. And I just hated everywhere I went. I genuinely wanted to punch senior police officers. How I never did it, I don't know. That was the PTSD again. I could punch them, you know, because I hated them that much. And I went, one day I couldn't go in anymore, so I went to the headquarters, and I went to see an inspector in personnel, and I told him, if you don't move me, I'm going to resign. So bad is it now? And he put me in a little office in the headquarters, and I'd been there 3 days. I was climbing up the walls because I didn't want to be there either. And I went to personnel. Now, personnel have files on you, yeah? And what would happen normally is you'd ring them and say, can I come and have a look at my personal file, please? And they'd say, of course you can. Come in about an hour, and give you a time slot. And whilst in the period of time of you getting there, they'd go in that file and take stuff out that they didn't want you to see. Hand you what they do want you to see. And then when you finish with it, put everything back in. I go straight to the counter because I'm working at headquarters. And I said, can I have a look at my personal file? So this lady who hadn't worked there long, and she invited me in. She put me at a desk and gave me my file. And it was about that thick by then. So I sat at this desk. She said, if you want anything photocopying, let me know. So I started at the beginning, and it was like going back in time, because there was my initial application for the police to join the cadets. And it had my dad's handwriting on it. Bear in mind, he died at 42, 1978. And it was like reminiscing on things, you know. But the people who stood up for me to join the police, they'd all died. You know, who'd give me what do you call it? Give me a reference, yeah. And there were people who knew our family, but they died as well. So it was unbelievable going from the beginning all the way through all the different things I'd done, and I was reliving it all. And then I got towards the back, and there was an A4 brown envelope, yeah. On the back of it, on the flap, it had only to be opened by a divisional or branch commander, and it had a piece of sellotape that wasn't sticky anymore because it obviously been opened that many times. So I was intrigued. Obviously, I'm not a divisional or branch commander, but it's in my personal file, so I'm going to open it, aren't I? And I opened it, and there was a report in it from a Superintendent Holman, who had put this report in to Mr. McCrone who is the assistant chief constable I was telling you about in the grievance, who sent me away after 10 weeks I'd done nothing. And this was put in my personal file 8 years earlier when I was having them troubles. Yeah. So it was put in there in 95. And Holman had said I was corrupt. I wasn't to be trusted. I was paranoid, and that I was under investigation. So that's what I read in this document, official document from a superintendent to an assistant chief constable, saying I was bent, I was paranoid and under investigation at that time 8 years earlier. And I read it once. I must have read it 12 times because I couldn't believe it. But it was the last bit of the jigsaw for me, yeah, because of what had gone on. I then realised I'd been one who had been earmarked as the person responsible for Seven's downfall. And that's why they did all these things, shredded my QPM nomination, stopped commendations I was due, which David Wilmot later reinstated all of them. So it proves that they were worthy of something, you know, to get them years later. So I took that lady at her word, and I put a few pieces of paper together out of the file, and I asked her if she could photocopy them all. And I said, even the back of that envelope, please, with that writing on, only to be opened by Divisional Branch Commander. And she gave them me. Went and did it, give it me, and I went off. Now, I couldn't go home that night and tell my missus because, you know, a number of times she wanted to walk out on me, you know, it was unbelievable because of how I am. So I had to keep all that to myself, but it was churning in my head. And again, taking 10 steps forward, 20 back all the time. And so what I decided to do was find out, because under the police, if you're under investigation, they have to serve papers on you to tell you you're being investigated. So here's an official document from a superintendent to an assistant chief constable saying I was under investigation 8 years earlier. So there should be a record of that. Yeah. So I applied to the Discipline and Complaints Department to see my record. They asked me why I wanted to see it. I said it's a personal reason. So I was allowed to see it as long as I was supervised by an inspector, and I wasn't allowed to take anything away. So I was happy with that. I went, I looked for June 95 when this document was placed in my file, and there was nothing in there about an investigation. So I put a report in then to the head of internal discipline, a great guy called Don Brown, who died unfortunately in June, but has helped me a lot recently. I put this report in asking him, what was this investigation about? Why was I not told about it officially? And what was the result of it? And no sooner had I put that in, I got a phone call to go and see him. He was full of apologies. And he said he'd heard that these brown envelopes existed, but he'd never seen one before. And he said that he can only assume or come to the conclusion that it was some form of Masonic conspiracy within the CID against me. Yeah. So, what I then, he said, what do you want? I said, I want to get to the top and tell them about this. Because, like in all organisations, they like the good stuff to go up. They don't let the shite to go up there, do they? They cushion them all from it. So I said I want to see the chief constable, who at that time was Michael Todd. So he had nothing to do with what happened to me because he was nowhere in the Great Manchester Police at the time. He took over, come from the Met. This is the Michael Todd who committed suicide, if you remember. He went walking up in the hills. So. The one guy who tried to stop me seeing Michael Todd was a guy called Vince Sweeney, who was assistant chief constable. And he was the only member of the command team still in GMP 8 years later when I find that report, who was in GMP when all my troubles were going on. Yeah. So he says, come and see me because I'm the only member of the command team. I'll sort it. Don't go and see the chief. So I says, well, if I don't get satisfaction with you, I want to go further up. Because it's important to me to see these people face to face to tell them. So I go to see Sweeney. I've got a representative with me from the Police Federation from Wales because I don't trust Greater Manchester Police Federation because one of the guys at the top of there at the time was the best pal of Seddon's. Yeah. So I call them Mr. Ons. They've all got red eyes.
Mm.
Yeah. And I go to see Sweeney, and the first thing he says to me is, "Great to see you, Gary. While you're here today, I'm going to shred this in front of you." That was that document I found in my file. And I said, "Hang on," I said. "Wherever?" I said, "That's evidence of what's happened to me. Why would I want to see that shredded?" But he wanted to get rid of it. So he agreed then not to destroy it. I said, "I want something put in my file to counter what's in that document." And I never thought he would do, but he produced this report which went in my file, and it was totally what he said was effectively somebody in the CID command at the time halted my nomination for the QPM. The only person that refers to is Dave James, who was the chief super, who told me to my face I was still in, would get it. He's the guy who shredded my nomination.
Right.
Yeah. He is a Mason again. Yeah, he was well known for running nests of Masons in whatever department he had. And he's the guy who protected Ken Seddon, yeah, from that department, and stabbed me in the back. But again, I took it to him. I didn't get satisfaction with Sweeney, so then I went to see Michael Todd in his office. Had an hour with him. He also said, "This is a Masonic conspiracy. It wouldn't have happened if I was here," he said. So 2 separate senior officers in GMP have said to me that that's a Masonic conspiracy. And they would have been happy to see me swinging from a tree in the park just to get out of their hair. You know, and this is, when I've said to you before about the people you're dealing with on these covert operations, some of those individuals, I would honestly say, who I met doing that job, would have been great to have as mates if I'd have been who they thought I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand that fully.
I could trust them. I could trust those individuals as mates, more so than in the police, people in the police. Yeah. I ended up looking over my shoulder for villains outside, but more so villains in the police. Mr. Ons with the red eyes, who would shaft you as soon as look at you. You know, and you know, I've rushed through the end bit because I'm conscious of the time, and there's a lot more to it. But the point I want to make, Jack, is that book tells everything, and it's published 4 weeks ago today. Everything in it is true, and if any of those I've mentioned today want to come out of the woodwork and say it didn't, we'll bring it on, because I'm happy to show you that it did. So
tell me about the book, where you can get it from and things like that.
It's all the books. It's all major distributors, and it's quite a long-winded title, really. But obviously, Amazon, the cheapest, and then you can get Waterstones, the publishers themselves, Pen and Sword. The gratifying thing for me was I sat on this for years, and it was only when my mum was dying with Alzheimer's. She always there's a card which is in the photo section in the book, which she sent me when I was really going under, to try and boost my my thought process. And I've put a picture of a card that she put in the book. But she's always said to me, "You want to get the story out," and I kept thinking about it, and then I didn't. And then you've got a lot of legal constraints because you're saying things about people. But when she got the Alzheimer's, I'd go and spend every night with her, and when I come home, I'd sit up and type it out. But the gratifying thing was I went to a publisher. First publisher I went to wanted to do it. Yeah, because you hear stories of people going all over the show trying to get a publisher. So it was produced. All the manuscripts were gone through. Eventually, ended up with the final manuscript. It was going to go for printing. Greater Manchester Police approached the publisher and say, "We want a copy of it." This is weeks before it was going to be published. The publishers had no legal obligation to give them a copy, but they agreed to it. So they let them have it. They delayed coming back with anything for 3 weeks. Then they wanted things changing. they weren't getting any. They kept coming back to me saying, "Is this okay? Do you want to change it?" And I had arguments for why it shouldn't be changed. Yeah. So then government legal department gets involved from the security services, and they send letters out saying we want this and that changing. One of the things they wanted me to change was referring to Ken Seddon in the book, who is DCI Ken Seddon. They wanted me to refer to him as DCI Ken to protect him. Why should I protect him after what he did to me? And the point is, anything I say about him is already in the public domain.
Right.
So I'm not telling you nothing you didn't know. If you Google him, it comes up about what he got charged with and all this business. You know, so those are the sort of things. That's why I argued them. They also said I've given tactics away for undercover policing. So I sent them loads of books, copies from pages in books I have. You know, there's like that one there, Undercover, by this guy, Joe Carter. You know, now there's things in there which, you know, I mention it in my book, but it's not the first time it's been mentioned because it's in these other books. But they're saying I'm giving tactics away, so I want it taken out. So I sent them back then saying, you're talking rubbish because this is already out there. So I changed minuscule things just to appease them.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I've ended up in the High Court, and I haven't got the money to fight an organisation like them. So I had to say, okay, I'll take these bits out, which doesn't affect the story, but the main bits are kept in. And you know, the main thing about this is you know, some people might say, oh, he's written there's another undercover book now, another police officer telling his story. All I wanted to achieve was to get the story out, so that these people who are sat on the backsides now, senior officers who've got their big pensions, let people know what they do, what they're like, you know, what they've done over the past. I mean, GMP is getting slated at the moment, the way it's being run, and you know, the things they're doing and they're covering up. But I was somebody who did the job professionally, to the best of my ability, got results, which is what I was there for, and then I get stabbed in the back by corrupt officers in the force.
So are you saying this is a sort of it's not just in JMP, would you say it's a wider
no, it goes
Masonic influence
all over the show? I mean, you know, like this Masonic thing, there's an influence with Hillsborough, the Hillsborough inquiry. The match commander on the day, he was a Grand Master in the lodge, and the suggestion is that allegedly statements were altered afterwards, unbeknownst to those officers who put those statements in. Those officers didn't know they'd had their statements changed. Someone's done it, but you know, there's supposed to be a Masonic influence over that to protect that match commander. You know, so it goes on all the time, and I've seen it myself. You know, when I said to you at the very beginning, was it 4 days ago we started this?
Yeah,
talking. When I said about Masonic influence, you know, and how I've seen it myself in the job. You could have on a promotion board, you would have 3 senior officers who you go to see once you've passed the exams, and they decide that day whether you are suitable to be promoted. So what if you were in the lodge with them? Yeah. And another one was John Stalker in his book, which I've put a section of it in mine, basically. And there's a chapter about Masons. And what John Stalker, we all know what happened to him. He got suspended during the shoot to kill inquiry. Got took off the job of shoot to kill in Northern Ireland. Whilst he's suspended from his job, the head of the CID was appointed, Peter Toppin, and he was the chief super in charge of CID in Great Manchester. He was well known for taking officers back up on Saddleworth Moor, trying to find some of the victims from Myra Hindley and Brady, and they did find another body, but that was Peter Toppin. But John Stalker's view of Peter Toppin was that had he, John Stalker, not got suspended, he wouldn't have allowed Peter Toppin to be made head of CID because he thought he wasn't experienced enough. Yeah. So when he comes back to work, he gets Peter Topping in because he's heard that whilst since he took charge of the CID, Peter Topping's been appointing masons in major departments. Yeah, the fraud squad and the drug squad. So John Stalker gets him in and asks him about it. And he says, yeah, it's right. So he says, well, don't you think people might wonder why that is? And he says that he will always, all the things being equal, he will always appoint a mason in these departments because they're the only ones he can trust. He knows he can trust. The others, he only thinks he can. So he will always appoint a mason, and he doesn't see anything wrong with that.
Right.
So do you think that's fair? If me and you were police officers going for a position, I'm a mason, you're not, and all the things being equal were the same. Yeah, I get it because I'm a mason. Because he believes he can trust me better than you. That can't be right.
Yeah, that's got to be hard. I would think that, on a personal level, that is an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
I have no thoughts on the Masons really.
But you won't do if they've not affected you.
No. I mean, I've been many years ago. I was part of the RAOB. Which used to be referred to as the Poor Man's Masons, but it's just a bunch of old blokes that like to sit around drinking and pay for each other's.
Yeah. I said at the beginning, I've nothing against the Masons per se. They do a lot of great things. I just don't see how you can be a police officer and a mason.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it in business. It would be very handy for business.
It's for networking, isn't it? Getting your business
for networking and things like that. I can see that, but in high-profile jobs, I can see where things like line of duty and other things pick up on the Masonic influence.
Yeah.
Because I don't profess to know much anything beyond what I see on TV of the Masons. But you do see them in the bad light. I'm sure there are good Masons out there.
But plenty are. That's the point I'm stressing. I'm not against them, per se, but I just don't think you can do it when you're in the police. And like you've said, you've no view on them one way or the other, really. But nobody would have if they don't affect your life. But for me personally, it has affected my life. And I asked myself why have I been affected? Well, I can't answer it apart from it was all for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it's been deep rooted in your life, in your whole career. It's been there, so I can understand why you feel this way and why you're actually standing up. And
some people would question the morality of me tape recording covertly conversations. Yeah. Now, if I didn't have those conversations taped that I'm talking about in the book, and I just said to you today, well, he said this, and he said that. What he'd say, I never said that. Or he took that the wrong way. That was never said. That's been said many, many times where people have tried to, take things forward, and they'll have said, no, that didn't happen. Yeah, well, I'm here today to tell you it did happen. And if anyone wants to hear them, they can hear them.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Wow. That's certainly been an education.
Well, I've been here that long. I was clean shaven when we started.
Yeah, I think I was as well. But, yeah, I mean, it's an absolute amazing story.
I've missed some bits out, and I have a tendency to jump backwards and forwards, so apologies for that.
That's all right. We could possibly do a part 2 at some point.
Yeah, I mean, the book doesn't jump backwards and forwards. The book's straight at it, and all the facts are there. But I've got that much in my head. I'll be telling you something, and then I've forgot that I've not mentioned something to you that I should have mentioned earlier. So I tend to jump about a little bit. But apologies for that. I think I got the majority of it over with today.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, we can always do a part 2 at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, I've really enjoyed this. It's really been an eye opener, to be honest.
Well,
It's
I
only
can't
ever-
believe it, and it happened to me. I'll tell you that.
Exactly. You only ever see it on things like Line of Duty, or a lot of my viewers would be too young to remember the bill.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, though, we all know them. There's been police officers in the police who get a cushy job. They sit on the backside for 30 years, get the pension, and then they're off. And I haven't got paid any more money than them.
No,
for what I've done.
No,
and it might seem to some people, oh, he's blowing his own trumpet there, but I'm not blowing my own trumpet. I'm just saying that it's a particular line of police work which is you're putting yourself up front in situations where you're on your own a lot of the time. And if it all goes pear-shaped, there's no one there to help you. And nasty things could happen to you. And even today, things can happen to you, because I said to you before, this isn't people pinching milk bottles off steps. If I come and lock you up, Jack, and say you're under arrest for theft, I'm going to take you to the police station, book you in, interview you. You know what the score is. You either reply no comment, and we go to court, and we let the court decide whether you're guilty or not. With this, I've infiltrated somebody, and they've met their friends, met their family. They've accepted me as a friend and an acquaintance. And when they find out later you're a police officer, and you stood there saying about what's gone on, they hate you with a vengeance then.
of course, yeah.
So there's a big difference between that and normal police work, I'll tell you. And so again, I like to think it reinforces why this story means so much to me, to tell it, because otherwise I wouldn't be sat here talking about it.
Yeah.
Wow. A bit of a roll of the dice. There you go.
Well, brilliant.
So anyway, thank you for your time today. I know I've took up quite a lot of it, but
no, I've really enjoyed it.
It's cathartic for me to talk about it.
It's cathartic for me. It helps me
to get it off my chest is great, and I do get a benefit from that. So you've done a number of things today, Jack. You've allowed me to get it off my chest a bit, and hopefully to make some people aware of what happened.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. It's been. I find these things cathartic anyway. It's a whole thing about me building up my confidence, and that's how why ShedX started. What I'll do is I'll wind down here. I'll cut the feed, and we'll just have a little quick chat and a debrief.
One good thing for me though, Jack, I didn't see you putting any matchsticks in your eyes to keep them open. No.
I like listening and I like speaking, so this is a perfect thing for me. All right. So thanks everybody for watching. This episode was sponsored by Jason Edwards and his book Monsters Among Us. That can be found on Amazon and all good bookshops. Thanks for tuning in. The next episode should drop in the next few days, hopefully Monday. We're working on that. On behalf of me and all at ShedX, I'd like to say thank you, and we'll see you again. Cheers, guys. Bye.